Hey, it's Scott, and welcome back, my friends, to another episode of Spin Magazine's Lip Service. My next guest is known professionally as Tove Lo. I call her Tove Lo, the Swedish pronunciation. She's a Swedish singer, songwriter, and actress who's been called Sweden's darkest pop export. She's known for her raw, grunge-influenced take on pop music. Her honest, complex, and autobiographical lyrical content has led to her being dubbed the saddest girl in Sweden. Excited to get into it with her today and talk about her new album, Dirt Femme, her history and journey and upcoming tour. Please welcome to the show in just a moment, Tove Lo. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for coming. I'm excited to have you here.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was researching you, one of the best things I found out is that you're a fan of Hole.
Yes.
So that's a band I've been playing in for years.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I don't know if you knew that. So always a cool thing.
I'm making the connection now, and I'm like, Jesus Christ.
Well, I'm wearing the T-shirt, so what can you say?
So hello, yeah.
And thanks for being here. Yesterday was almost like International Tove Lo Day, because it was like, right, the 9th of October.
Yes.
So we should talk about that for a moment, because I think a lot of your fans posted that as the reference to one of your songs from a couple years back. And that was pretty cool, right? They actually, does that happen every 9th of October?
Yeah, they kind of made it into their own little, that song is like a fan favorite a little bit. So it was like... it's a pretty sad one, and I think it connects with a lot of people, just like the very moment of a breakup, and just like has this feeling of being lonely, and I think that resonates with a lot of my fans.
Maybe I think so too, for sure.
Yeah, for a lot of humans, I guess, in general.
It's almost like a national holiday, probably in Sweden, I would imagine, right?
Probably.
At this point, for sure. So first, I also want to say, let's get out of the way. The correct pronunciation name is Tove Lo.
Yes.
And I got it right. I guess like RuPaul, who did too, right?
Yeah.
So, and talk about the origin of your name for a little bit, Tove, if you don't mind, because I know it's regarding a lynx, and it's how you grew up when you were a kid and everything. And I don't know if I think you prefer both these days, right? Both are sort of widely acceptable to you.
Maybe I'm a little bit too go with the flow when it comes to my name, but I guess it's just, I think also being Swedish and having a very Swedish name, you're used to people, if you travel a lot, everyone's going to butcher it in some way or like pronounce it wrong. So it doesn't bother me that much, to hear the different pronunciations.
Well, what's the worst pronunciation you ever heard?
Probably something like Tove Lo or something. It's just like
that's really...
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
This has nothing to do with my name at all.
No, exactly. Right. No, but I feel like I mean, Tove is just, it's been my name since I was little. It's my middle name, but in Sweden, it's really common to go by your middle name. Like your first name is a name that's kind of like related to a family member or something, but it's very rare for people to go by it. So like my whole band, everyone has a different, first name to what their spoken name is, you call it. So which causes a lot of confusion.
Is it sort of a nickname?
No, it's like all my credit cards are, in Tove, like in Sweden and stuff. But here they're not allowed to be. It has to be in Ebba. But it's hard. I don't really know how to explain it. It's like it's just what parents do. Like the first name is something that it reminds you of a family member or something, and then like, oh, it's my granddad's name, and then your middle name is what you called by your whole life. Yeah. And so it's legally your name, but it's not your first name.
Well, thankfully I didn't butcher it, because it could have been really bad.
Yeah.
And thankfully we also have TikTok, the beauty of TikTok that explains, because you did a great video actually the other day, like, I need to set the record straight on how to say my name. I need to address something here. Yeah. So, but yeah, you're right. Tove Lo and voulez-vous.
Yeah, I think that's what clicked with people. Yeah. It was the Tove Lo, voulez-vous. That's the easiest way to figure it out.
Well, there's so much to talk about. The new album, the tour, obviously. The show is a little bit about like, this is your life, your history. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to start from the beginning, if you don't mind. It's sort of like the rock and roll version, I guess, of how I built this, and kind of like where you grew up. Were you around music a lot as a kid? Tell me about your upbringing in Sweden and whatnot.
I'm like, where do we start? I feel like I don't have a ton of memories from my childhood, and I feel like some of them are memories that like my parents have told me, and I've created the memory in my mind. I don't know. I listened to a podcast about memory and how we can't trust our memory at all.
Mine's
so it
the
makes
worst,
me really nervous. So is mine. But I also feel like, I wonder though, well, that when you've like toured a lot and been a lot of places, like I think a lot of your old memories get kicked out from new experiences and new people and new environments. I kind of feel like that also is a thing. But I remember, I don't remember a lot of music growing up. Like, not that my parents didn't listen to music or anything, but it wasn't really like a prevalent thing in my life in terms of like, oh, the first artist I loved when I was a kid. But I just remember kind of a lot of sort of songs in Swedish that I know by heart for some reason. I don't remember when I heard them, but it must have been when I was a kid, you know?
Because your dad was like in fintech and your mom, your
mom's
mom
a
is
therapist.
right?
Yeah.
Definitely not in music.
No. But my aunt, my mom's sister, she was very musical and she would write all these like kind of outrageous rhymes and like kind of sing-song rhymes that we would all like sing with her. They were quite amazing. It was like, Mom is torturing Dad with needles because he was like flirting with other girls, like would rhyme in Swedish. It would be very. She would just do kind of like fun, murderous rhymes that we would all learn.
It's a new genre of music.
Yeah, it's a new genre of music that would be quite incredible, I think, actually.
I think that could be something we could start after this.
Yeah.
But needless to say, your family wasn't really musical, but you have a lot of memories. Do you remember your first musical kind of connection and what it was kind of what connected you to music early on?
I think very early on, it was, I think I just noticed that I loved to sing. So anytime that there was like, you know, in school, we have a lot of holidays in Sweden. So anytime there was like a break coming up, we would have a little like end of school, you know, kind of festivities. And then I would always try and sing. I would be, you know, I like the attention, I think too. And to be kind of I was a very like performer in my way of being as a kid. And then I think when I became a teenager, I became way too self-conscious and like didn't really, enjoy that aspect of it as much. But I think when I became like, oh, I love music, it was more like whole Silverchair, Nirvana. I was more in that zone when I like picked my own songs.
It's so fascinating because you had this amazing grunge background, but then the music you create is different, right? It's dark pop. But
I will say that I think Robin is the one artist that's been with me since I was like maybe 10 or 11 all the way through till now. Like no matter how my taste has like fluctuated throughout my life, she has always been there.
Yeah, I love
that's
that.
my number one. Yeah.
And when did you first hear Courtney? What was your first experience hearing that record? I guess it was through Nirvana and that whole connection.
Yeah, it was, but it was through my one of my best friend's older sister. Her and her friends were like, I grew up in kind of like a posh area outside of Stockholm in Sweden, and my friend's older sister and her friends like kind of went against the norm, and they like started dressing really grungy and wore a bunch of studs and dyed their hair, and we were just like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then they would just like sit in her room and listen to music, and we would put our heads against the door and like try and listen to it. And then they would sometimes, if they were feeling nice, they would show us some stuff. And that's when I remember hearing Celebrity Skin and like
yeah, that was like the third record, I believe, maybe fourth record at that point. And Nirvana, obviously, huge Nirvana fan, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And you mentioned Silverchair, which is also
that was Daniel Jones was my like first proper crush. Like I would write on my Converse like, I love Daniel Jones. Yeah.
I love it. And so you basically started doing out recitals and things. Were there like talent shows growing up in Sweden that you were part of?
Yeah, there was, but like, you know, very small school. It was like one or two classes per grade. So like, and we would do, I remember second grade, we did like a talent show and you would lip sync. And I think then what did I do? I think that's when I was super hooked on Titanic. So I did the My Heart Will Go On. And I had like a purple little like glass or like a plastic heart necklace that I thought was like the necklace in the movie.
Amazing.
And I came second place.
Who came in first?
First was it was a boy who did I can't. There's on that Paradiso. This is your love. Do you remember that song? Maybe that was only a Euro hit, but and he wore like a pink wig, and he had his like girlfriends. They did like a choreo and everything. So yeah, and he deserved to win. He deserved to win.
We don't know where he is now, but do you remember writing songs and getting into writing songs at that maybe 13, 14? When did you start writing?
Around. I did write I started earlier than that, actually. The same friend whose sister we were looking up to so much, you know, because she was so cool and listened to cool music. Me and her started writing songs at like 11. We would just like sing words, like, you know, and then we would make it in like fake English because that was like all the pop music was in. So, but we started making songs around then. And then I remember in Sweden, you have a lot of these like after school places. So every school has like another venue close by that you can go to after school if you can't go home or if your parents can't grab you in time. So it's free and you go there and you just like play, and you could like play music, you could like eat snacks and just kind of watch movies and hang out, which was amazing.
Sounds like somewhere I want to be right now.
Yeah, exactly. And we would just go there, and there were some like shitty instruments in the basement, so we started kind of like trying to play stuff. And I remember we wrote a song called Confess. There was something about like, I was 14 and I hadn't really had a lot of like love experience at that point, but it was definitely like a cheating story. I must have gotten it from a movie or something. But it was like, you better confess or I'll make your life a real big mess. It was like a revenge song of some kind.
I'm 14 and I don't know what's going on.
I don't know what's going on, but I've seen this in the movies. Yeah.
And at some point you actually joined a band and you formed like a rock band, right? I don't know how old you were at that point, maybe 16?
That was like right after. So I think that's where like I feel like my music journey really like started. When I started to realize like this is what I want to do was high school, because I applied to this music high school in Sweden that's like it's a public school, but you get in based on your grades and your audition. And my parents let me apply. They're like, she's not going to get in. She's not that good. And then I got in, and they were like, oh, that's such a hippie school, but they just saw how happy I was. So they were like, okay, you can go. Make sure you study extra math and French. You need to do all those things. I'm like, of course I will. And I did not, but...
They're like, you sure you don't want to be a scientist?
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much that. But that was kind of what I was choosing in between. I had really good grades in school. So I was choosing between the like, sort of like biology science at the like really... prestige high school or this hippie. It was also prestige high school, but in a very different way to what they're used to in terms of music, you know. But when I started there, I remember the shock of starting there and like, oh, I'm not the best here at all. I'm kind of the worst. Everyone is so good. And, you know, it was kids who grew up with musical parents who had gone to music school earlier in their life. It was just everyone was really, really talented. And I remember feeling really like, oh, fuck, I have so much to prove right now. and that, I think, kicked my confidence a bit for a few years. But
it might have made you work harder in a sense too,
for
right?
Sure,
because you had something to prove at that point.
It made me like, I think that's one thing that I will always cherish, is that I'm not naturally good at things, but I practice and then I get good. And I think that was the same with singing. Like, okay, I can do this, but if I practice, I'm going to get really good. And so I would practice so much. Like, it was my vocal coach that I had at that school was incredible. She really like made me like want it, you know.
And were the classes like theory, or were they performance classes? What were the classes like at that point?
It was music theory. And I remember I did the like music theory tests, and I like just put a smiley face on the front. I was like, I can't, I don't know any of this stuff, but that was fine. They just, okay, we just want to know where you're at, so we can put you in like a class that matches your ability.
Yeah.
But then it's like performance, you play in bands. We did like 2-week blocks of like, okay, this is jazz weeks. And then we do 2 weeks of like learning how to sing and play jazz music. So you'll be put together in an ensemble with like 2 singers, 2 guitar players, a bass player, a keyboard player, and a drummer. And then we would all, you know, have individual lessons, learning our craft, like our instrument, vocals or drums or whatever. And then you'd have these like ensemble sessions a few times a week. And then they had rehearsal spaces that were open till 11 p.m. So you could also stay in school and rehearse if you had like a performance or something that week, which is really cool.
And at some point, did you meet friends at school and start to form this band?
Yeah.
Tremblebee, I think, was
Tremblebee,
Yeah, I did a deep dive on Tremblebee
Yeah.
on YouTube. Interesting, right? Because there's everything on YouTube. You think like it's not up there?
Oh, it's...
And then you do a dive and it's like, wait a minute, there's Tremblebee.
There's full recordings on SoundCloud you can download still, I think. We were like, this is free. Like, I think 18-year-old me were like, you fucking sell out. Music should be free, which I don't agree with. But I think I was just like, I don't know.
It was kind of rock. It was a little folky almost.
Like,
there was
it's like weird alternative rock for musicians, I feel like. It like changes key and tempo like 4 times in the song. But that's also how I learned to, I think, record and perform like live, really like being good at that. Like recording, I remember the guitar player wrote most of the songs. I did some of the lyrics, but like he wrote most of it. And we would record and he would be like today, you know, you do like I do few takes of the verse, few takes of the pre-chorus, few takes of the chorus, and you kind of like pick what feels the best. He wanted it to be, the lead should be 1 full take all the way through without any cutting or adjusting.
Like the 70s.
Yeah. Yeah. He was very like, otherwise you're not a real singer, basically. Right. And
meanwhile, no albums are made like that anymore.
No, definitely not. Yeah. No. Yeah. And I feel like that's a cool way to think about it, but it was obviously the music was so complicated to sing and play that me singing one take through, like I need the timing and the pitch, everything perfect, was very hard. And like no thinking about like, oh, what about the emotional output? Not at all. It was just like perfection in like key and like if I missed one like syncopated thing in the verse, it was like, gotta do it again. And I was just like, but I think it taught me a lot, you know.
And where are the members of Tremble Be now? Are they somewhere? Are they
I
still
talked
playing?
to the bass player, Tom, a while ago, actually. They did like a Swedish little documentary on me on a Swedish radio station. He like called me and he's like, they asked me about you and I feel like I needed to talk to you. I haven't seen you in years. Actually, I haven't seen them in a really long time. Yeah, but I hope they're well.
I'm sure. At a certain point, though, did you realize, well, this is my calling, right? I'm 16, I'm 17, I'm in Tremble Be. I don't know if it's going the way I want it to go, but I feel like this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I mean, I felt that. I think we were a band for quite a long time, actually. I think I was, 17. I might even have been 18 when I started with them. And then we played for a few years. And I remember we played like all the shitty bars around Stockholm and like some other places in Sweden. And we would rehearse like 3 times a week, like really focused. And I really enjoyed that time a lot, being in the rehearsal space. I do miss that a bit now in terms of like having the songs come together in the rehearsal space is a really special feeling. But it kind of changes that, you know, now like my producers are kind of my band in that sense.
Even now with the pandemic, people were sending files. I mean, it was so un-rock and roll the way things are created now, right? Because I'm glad that you did that, because it's something that I did for many years. I mean, we get in a room, we all hammer it out, and maybe you got a great song, or maybe you had to keep practicing for 4 years, right? But it's interesting the way music is created now versus the way it was years ago, right? And I
think it's become, like everything, it's become more isolated, you know? And I think it's the fear of... It's the fear of awkward energy, and it's the fear of social anxiety. People are so like, you know, and I even feel that when I do so many songwriting sessions with people for their project and my project. And it's like, if it's a new person I haven't worked with before, if it gets canceled, you always get that little relief of like, oh, thank you. And which is so like, why? I love this. Right, like, I love doing this. And I guess it's because, but then again, like when I write with people I know really well, then I'm like, I can be in there for hours and I'm so relaxed. Even when we're challenging each other, we're fighting or whatever, it still like it's giving me so much, you know? But there's something about that. Like I think about when people do collaborations and features and, you know, you do that with people you've never even, like some people I've worked with, I've never even met them, you know, and we have like a song together. I'm like, oh, it's doing well, but I've never looked in your eyes. It's so strange. Because
like you worked with Lorde at some point, right? But did you actually meet her?
Oh, I did actually. That was in person.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know if you guys actually met.
No, I think she's, I think for her, she's a very in-person writer. Yeah. And that was a very special moment.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was, watching her work was, an honor.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to get to that. But taking a step back, is it true that you actually spent a bit of time learning drums at some point?
Yeah, I think I went through all the instruments. Okay.
Only because I'm a drummer, so I felt like we could have some like drummer talk here for a second.
I would disappoint you. Let's say that. I think I was trying to learn all instruments to kind of get a better feel. But also when I was in Tremble Be, like it would be like me and the guitar player would go to the rehearsal space, take all the gear, and then go to the venue and like set it up. So I knew how to set up a drum kit. I knew how to like set everything up, you know, Michael, the amps and all that stuff.
Sometimes I was like, I wish I learned how to play harmonica, because the setting up of the drum set is a pain in the ass. Let's face it, right? You needed like a station wagon or some kind of SUV. It's a lot. Yeah.
But I feel like I've lost sort of, I guess when I was like, okay, one thing is enough in a way, but I do feel like when it's something it's still my favorite instrument to learn, you know? And I think when I make music with Ludwig, who's my main producer now, he's a drummer from the beginning. So I think a lot of it comes from like we usually start with just like drums and vocals sometimes.
Great.
But I remember going to like, these like clinics in Stockholm.
But
it was like it was called bass and drum. And it was like Virgil Donati and stuff. We're there doing like crazy just drum solos for like 4 hours.
Were you into drummers? Amazing. Did you like study drummers growing up too, or not really?
Not really, but it would just be through like, I guess it would just be through kind of being in like a very sort of nerdy music environment, and you just kind of like pick, and like bands that like, I'm like, oh, the drummer Mos Volta is really cool. Like it kind of, you would pick up on all that kind of stuff and be, and like listen extra and be very impressed by the skill. But I wasn't like I wouldn't nerd out to that too much.
Well, along the way, you probably had some odd jobs too, right? When you were writing music and in school. So I think you worked at like Urban Outfitters and you things like a bakery, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So I guess at some point it all clicked for you and you started making money writing music, because initially you started as a writer.
Yeah.
So talk to me about that time period for yourself and what it was like when you first were like, you know what, I'm not working at Urban Outfitters anymore. I'm done. I'm making some money here, making music, and this is what I'm going to do from my life.
What was that journey? I think it was, I was jumping between jobs. I was playing in Trembleby, and I was slowly getting sort of like jobs as a session singer, like doing demo jobs, like recording other producers' songs that they were pitching to artists and stuff. So I started doing that a little bit. And then I started working as an assistant to this vocal coach / life coach who was like looking after a lot of like really big Swedish, like 90s, like, singers and stuff. So I learned so much working for her. It was just like, it was kind of absolute chaos, but she was an incredible woman who taught me a lot about just the industry. And like, and we would set up live shows with her artists, and I would help her set that up. And then I would meet producers who were like, oh, you're a singer too. Wait, I need someone to record this thing. And I kind of, all of a sudden I was doing like, hustling, doing like cover gigs. I was singing on cruise ships, like doing all that kind of shit. But at least I was
Is there a video of that on YouTube? You
I hope not. Oh my God. I was singing. It was like a 24-hour cruise to Finland and back, just so that people could buy booze cheap. So it was like 24 hours. It was like cost nothing. And I would sing 40 minutes of Danish hits on the way home from on the way back in the morning, to promote their Danish summer cruise.
Amazing.
It was, I can't even describe to you the people that were on this boat. I remember I got some of the most outrageous like advances I've ever, and I was sitting, what was that, 22 maybe?
And this is in the morning too? You said?
In the morning. Right, I mean, we would have to go out on the cruise ship obviously the night before. So me and the band would like grab a couple beers, but it would be like, hey, my buddy over here just got out of jail and, he hasn't been with anyone in a while. And I'm like, I'm good. Thank you.
Like, not really what I was looking for, but thank you.
Always like watch over your shoulders a few times going back to your room. Like it was pretty wild. But at least I was like, if I did a few though, like that would, cover gigs would pay pretty well in Sweden, and same with the session singing. So if I did a few of those, like a week or a month, like I could pay my bills. I didn't have a lot of money, but I could pay my bills. I would like be able to work on my own music. Like that's kind of when I was like, okay, I really want to do this. Like I'm getting a lot of no's. Nobody's really interested. Like no publisher, no label, no one is like, no manager wants to be involved in this. But I just kind of kept pushing, and then eventually I got to play this. There was this festival called Peace and Love in Sweden. It's not around anymore, but this must have been 2010 or 11, maybe 2011. And I got to play a cafe outside the festival.
It's like Spinal Tap. You're not playing the festival. You're in the other festival down the street.
It was a lot of Spinal Tap moments in the beginning for me. And we I went with my band. This was after Trembleby, and we slept in the car. We played at noon, and this A&R from Warner Chappell just happened to be there. That was kind of thing. It was like the industry cafe. So. And he saw us live and he was like, I like your lyrics. I don't know what else is happening with you, but like the lyrics are good. And I was like, okay. And then he eventually ended up signing me as like a, writer development kind of deal. And quite quickly there, I met a lot of producers that I still work with so much to this day, like from day one. And
do you remember the first sessions, what you were getting paid like early on? Like your very first session?
I will get an advance. I got an advance from them, and then you don't get paid per session. So I just did like, you were just hoping for cuts, and the first few cuts I started getting was with Icona Pop, who were friends of mine who I went to high school with. And they like took me they like brought me in like, we want her to work on lyrics. It like really did me a solid, you know. And then I got to go and do a lot of at Cenomania in outside of London.
Sure.
So I got some cuts with Girls Aloud on the Saturdays, and that was kind of like how it got started. But I mean, it's hard to know like if you put out like what I would like. I have no idea what I was paid per session, you know, because you didn't really get that.
Like your very first session, no one ever said the first session you ever did. The guy didn't say, "Hey, do you want $100?" Like,
no.
It was just like, "Let's do it and see what happens."
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting. And at a certain point, you meet Max Martin, obviously. And so, what was that like? Because you had already been writing. Now you sit with Girls Aloud and different artists. And
I feel like by that point, though, so I didn't have anything. I had no cuts when I met Max Martin. I was just signed to Warner Chappell, and I got to LA for I was gonna do basically, okay, I'm like, where do I start this story? Okay, I get signed to Warner Chappell. I get asked to come with to one of their writers, Alex Kronlund, like who did a bunch of like big songs, like a lot of Britney, amazing writer. It was his birthday party, and they asked if I wanted to come with. I would meet a lot of the other writers at Warner Chappell. It would be kind of like a good thing for me to just come with them. I was like, I would love to. Got there, I got pretty drunk, so I got on stage and just kind of sang a few songs. And then Alex was like, I love your voice. I'm going to be in LA writing songs. Are you a writer? I'm like, yeah. He's like, great. I was like, do you want to hear anything? I was like, did Julius sign you? I'm like, well, yeah, he's looking out for me. It's like, good. I trust it. Like, come to LA. And Julius, who still is my publisher, and like, he's like the number one person I send music to. He was like, it's too early for you, but I'm going to send you anyway. And you can just like, you know, meet people, see how you feel, like, you know, work with Alex if that happens, you know, if he has time, you know, but I'm just gonna send you and you can meet people basically. And
did you know anyone in LA? Or
no,
was it, okay.
Nobody.
So you come here not knowing a soul.
Yeah, not knowing a soul. And it was before Uber. So I was, you know, I didn't drive. So still don't drive.
How'd you get around? It was like,
well, I found a
taxis.
lovely cab driver who was like, if you always call me and pay me cash, I'll come pick you up. So I would just have just like a big chunk of cash on me, and I would call him, and sometimes I would just have to wait 40 minutes outside some random person's house that I had a terrible session with. It was a pretty intense trip. But basically, when Alex and Martin are really good friends and work together a lot. And so when I got in the car from the airport, well, Alex was going to pick me up, but he surprised me with like sending a driver, which that had never happened to me in my life. So there's like this huge man in a suit with like my name on his iPad. And I was like, what? Like
spelled incorrectly or spelled correctly?
Spelled correctly. Yeah. And I get in the car and like, I was like, do you know where I'm going? And he's like, yeah, I'm taking you to Max Martin's house in Hollywood. And I was like, what?
Had you known who Max Martin was at that point?
Definitely knew who he was. Yeah. I mean, I was
He's
very
like a demigod
nervous.
in Sweden too,
yeah,
right?
I mean, he's like, you know, he's the biggest songwriter, you know, and like of all time. So that was okay, just prepare yourself. And I kind of walk in and I'm like, hello. And then Alex is there and like, hey, come meet everybody. And I'm like, hi, I'm sorry I'm in your home. Like, you don't know me. But they were, and I like didn't have a place to stay because I was going to stay with someone who was friends with someone, but it kind of fell through. And I was just kind of standing there like panicking because I was like, I've kind of counted on Alex to fix everything for me. Like, what do I do? And then Max and his family were like, do you need to stay here? Like,
Amazing.
I was like, thank you. So nice of them. So I stayed there for a while, and then I had to, like, they had guests coming, so I was like, hey, I'm getting out, and I just moved into the Saharan Motor Inn. You've seen
where's that?
Vine and Sunset, I think.
Beautiful Vine and Sunset.
Beautiful Vine and Sunset. Probably one of the sketchier motels you can find. But
I live by there. I don't even know what that is, but I also don't look. You know, I'm not looking for
you
it
don't
either.
look. But it was. But it was an experience. I was definitely a little bit scary coming home at night because it was just me and a bunch of. It's next to the Seventh Veil strip club.
Oh, okay, sure. I actually do, now that you say that, I feel like I have an idea
So it's
where
the
that is,
motel
right?
next door. So I would
not
wake
the
up
most
to
glamorous.
people banging all night, just like, what's going on? They're doing something weird in there. But still, I wrote a lot of songs. I don't think any of them were good that trip, but it was such a valuable experience for me to like get thrown in the room with people I'd never met before. The culture shock of American songwriting versus what I was used to kind of in Sweden, and just the general LA just mayhem, you know?
Also, I guess you probably agree, some of the best writing comes from life experiences like this, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So you mean that whole story is incredible. The Seventh Veil, living in that. I don't know what songs came out of there, but I'm sure they're great.
Yeah, so. I think that did a lot for just also the feeling of like being challenged, you know, in that way. And like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to just try, you know?
So at a certain point, I guess you wrote some songs with Max and it was successful because you kept writing with them, right?
Well, so it's kind of started off as a mentorship mainly. So I got, I didn't do any sessions with him that trip, but he gave me feedback on some of the songs that I've written, and I was like shaking, but it was so, such a great experience because he was being very respectful, and just, I feel like when you have that kind of legacy, it's hard to stay humble, but he's still a very humble person, I find. So, but I can't remember how long after, but it must have been like a couple years after writing for other people and kind of like, you know, proving myself in the sort of writing world a bit. They started kind of like a collaboration between Warner Chappell and MXM. And then me and 8 other producers got signed as like a collective called Wolf Cousins. And that's what I'm still part of to this day. So it's now it's expanded a little bit, but it's like, I think, the 8 of us are still like the kind of core group there.
But how incredible, by the way, and how surreal to go from school to starting to have like Max Martin as your mentor. It's so unheard of. That doesn't really happen too often like that.
I mean, I'm like, is it that Sweden is just that small, or like how?
No, but it's also an testament to how talented you are, right? Because in the end of the day, that wouldn't have happened unless they saw something.
No, and I think again, what I think they also what Julius keeps telling me is like the hard work that I put in so early on, even if it was like, okay, she's got a lot to learn, but she is willing to do all, like, just do it all and, like, really work hard and show up and, like, you know, wrong, try again. Just, like, kind of not giving up on a song and yeah, really giving it my all.
Yeah, but obviously it was working. You had this great collective, you start writing songs, and at a certain point you decide, you know what, I want to come out behind the shadows and, you know, behind the scenes and actually do my own thing, right? Or was that a conscious decision, or you just think, no, I'll do it on the side? I
mean, I think my artist dreams were kind of lukewarm in the beginning of my life. I just like wanted to make music and be able to travel and just make music. Like I didn't really like... Yes, I wanted to sing and play shows, but I think I loved being a writer for other artists. I enjoy that. I still enjoy that so much. I could really like see myself doing that for my whole life. You know, it's very a special feeling. And I think so kind of my artist dreams kind of got put on the back burner a little bit, but then I wrote a few songs where I'm like, oh, I can't give these away. And that was
too personal.
Yeah. And just like this is me. I just felt that like, this is me, that feeling. It's honest and it's vulnerable and it's like raw, and I'm admitting to like flaws that people usually would try and hide and that kind of stuff. And it just felt so right for some reason. And I remember I was saying to Julius and Martin, I was like, look, I still would love to, I want to be a part of this writing collective. I just want to know that like, can I also put out my own music? You know, the writing is going to be my career, but I just want to have some songs out there that are fully in my voice, just as like an indie side project, you know, and I didn't obviously...
Downplaying it.
Yeah, and I honestly don't think any of us in my team really knew the impact that like Habits Stay High would have like on my career and on just like how that would just like skyrocket me into this like worldwide place where I can like tour toward the world still, and that song still resonates with people. It's really cool.
And let's talk about that for a moment, because that is the song that really broke everything for you.
Yeah.
So, I guess why was Stay High so personal to you versus some of the other stuff? And you're being humble, but you've written with like Coldplay to Lorde to there's a list of like 50 artists we can get into, right? So you obviously were working with amazing artists at that point, but I mean, I don't, the list goes on. We'll get into it at some point. But again, that song was the one that really broke it, big for you. So at a certain point, you probably decided, like lyrically, it's too personal for me. It's too vulnerable. I can't imagine giving Habits to someone else. So what was it about that song that really made it, that you decided I need this for my own career?
You know what it was? I think it was a few things. It was because I wrote that verse. I imagine in my bathtub, then I go to sex club. So that I wrote that as a poem when I had like kind of given up a little bit. I was like, I'm so exhausted from being my only champion. Like I'm my number one champion, and I just feel like everyone's just kind of trying to tell me to like, just get a real job. And I was working in the reception at a Pilates center, and I was like really hungover, and I'd had a terrible fight with my boyfriend at the time, and we were about to break up, and I was like writing this, and I was like, why do I go into this like destructive zone, and I just started writing the verses. Like I still have the like page that I wrote that on for the first time. And then I tried to write the chorus to it for like 2 years. Like I really, at first it was more like, kind of like a fuck it, I do what I want kind of chorus. And then, but I was like, it's not right. It still isn't right. And then it finally clicked when I was in New York for my 25th birthday. And it was like, I was there doing songwriting, and it was during the Sandy storm.
Hurricane Sandy, yeah.
Hurricane Sandy. Yeah. And I was staying at a friend's place in Tribeca, and all the power, the reception, everything was out. So I couldn't actually talk to anyone on my birthday. I was just like fully alone.
By yourself, Hurricane Sandy on your birthday.
Yeah. And then I walked, and then he had a studio. It was Daniel Dinsky, who was also on the song. Like he had a studio in Midtown. So I walked up to the studio and would get to work from there because he was being really nice and let me borrow the studio. And then he came to New York, and I was like, I have this one song that I'm like still trying to figure out the chorus to. Like here's my original production on it, and like, and it still had the and I showed it to him, and he was like, oh, but this is a heartbreak song. Like, this is like, that's what it is. Like you singing about this behavior because you're like feeling sad. And once he said that, I kind of like, I just had the chorus, like the words just came, the melody all at once. And I was like, wait. And I was like, had the chords. I was just like, this is it. And he's like, that is it. And it was just like I think because the song has such a journey, and because I went through a lot, and it's like kind of went with me throughout my life, Yeah, and I remember then I sent it to Ludwig and Jacob, who, I've done so much of my stuff with, and I'm like, what do you think? And they're like, you did it, And then they produced it and kind of gave it the sound that I think is my sound now too. It's like it's a me and Ludwig are kind of the band in a way. Yeah. It's
interesting because I've heard you say sometimes the more personal it gets, the broader it gets in terms of songwriting, right?
Yeah.
So that song in particular too, right? I mean, because that obviously the story is so great to have that, and also the fact that you do have your whole life to write your first record, and it took you a couple years to write that song, right?
Exactly.
And then your second record's like, all right, in 3 months, can this be done? You're like, wait a minute, I just took 16 years to write this first record.
Exactly.
So do you remember the first time you heard Habits on the radio, and maybe in Sweden, I guess?
I do. It was actually, I actually do remember the first time I heard it in the US. And we were in a van, me and my band, going to the airport after doing like so much radio promo. Like it was just, 3 stations a day. Like, it was pretty intense. But we got in the car in the van to the airport, and it just comes on, and it was like like that feeling, and I remember I've heard other songs of mine on the radio in Sweden, like for the first time, which was also so special. I was with my brother one time, and it was like, what? I lost my mind. But it's also something as a Swedish person coming to the States and like hearing it. It's just so like that just feels so far away,
Yeah.
It was really cool.
I grew up in a time of cassettes. I'm aging myself, but I remember hearing a band I was in at that time on the radio. I kept pressing the button to eject the cassette. I'm like, wait a minute, this is on the radio. How is it possible? And it's like, there's no cassette in here. But and so at that point, do you just keep writing? Because you're like, all right, Habits is obviously going to hit it, and I want to write a whole record. I mean, what was the process like for you at that point with the first album, which has done incredibly well?
Thank you. Well, I feel like I'd been writing, like, I think once I had Habits, and because the thing is, I released it by myself at first, independently, in 2013, and then all the labels kind of just came running, because they're like, why haven't, because I had a lot of, contacts with A&Rs all over the world, because I was doing songwriting for other people, and so it was like, why have you not shown us this? And like, I made a video for it, and it was like pretty similar to the video that's out now. But it was just like I was like, I don't know. Well, I've been telling you I have an artist project that I'm kind of working on. And so then once, I got a lot of different offers from major labels, and I signed to Universal and kind of re-released it in 2014. And by that point, I was working towards, like, I'm making an album, like that's happening. But I put out my EP Truth Serum first, and then I think that like did really well, and then it was kind of like, okay, just let's get you ready for an album. And then I remember not really like scrambling to finish them, because also by that point my voice was starting to get really bad before my vocal cord surgery. It was like really starting to, and I remember being in the studio and like doing final recordings, and Ludwig was like freaking out. He's like, you can't sing. And I'm like, I know, but what are we going to do? Like,
so
I don't have a choice.
So what happened? All of a sudden you were singing and your vocal cord, you just stopped.
I was just, I mean, what the doctors told me, at first they thought it was a cyst, but it turned out it was a lump of scar tissue, because I had sung on them when they were bleeding. So just overuse, all the flying, all the promo, all the partying, all the singing, like it was just like too intense of a schedule for my voice.
The partying, for sure.
Yeah, the partying, but I was still like, I still think that the combination of just like that kind of intense, like flying and singing the same day, like at least when I talk to the voice doctors, I mean, they deal with opera singers, so they're they're completely like, how are they putting you through this? Like, this is not how it should be. Like, you can't, they're like, no interviews when you have a performance. Yeah. And I was like, well, that's not going to happen. They're like, we're writing you a note, like, this is what needs to,
or else you can't sing anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And it's fair. Like, now I'm pretty busy, and I'll like, but I try to be like, no more than 2-3 shows in a row max. Like, then I need a couple of days off, and I'm pretty good at sort of, not looking at things as life or death if I need to say no to something, which I think in the beginning of your career, you're so like anything is like, I'm kind of at that point now though. I'm saying yes to absolutely everything. My manager's like, should we like take a look at the schedule again? I'm like, no, it's good. I got it. Let's go.
But we are at a point in life where you kind of want to be out there. There's so much music. Obviously, everything you're putting out is phenomenal.
Thank
I
you.
think it's great because the world needs this, right? Especially now with what's going on in the world. But did you ever think, I'm being so open and honest and putting all my flaws out there, and I'm being so vulnerable, maybe I shouldn't put so much out there in the beginning, or were you completely comfortable with it?
I don't think I realized that because I wrote a song about it, I was going to have to talk about it. I think that was kind of a shock to me a little bit. Someone was like, whoa, so you sing about cheating on someone in a song. What happened? And I'm like,
I don't
how do you know that? Yeah, how do you know that? And I think that like really kind of put me in a place of like kind of shock. And I feel like I was able to stay vulnerable, because I think what I realized is like, if I don't write music the way I need for me, I can't do this at all, And I also think, getting thrown into sort of the commercial part of the music industry is quite different to the indie part,
Yeah,
So that was just like a whole other animal to tackle, and I feel like I have no problem expressing my opinion or being honest or share my feelings. But I didn't expect for it sometimes to get so twisted, or I also didn't really understand the culture around like never admit defeat, never show like always try to be your best possible you and like never show any kind of like flaw or breakdown. You know, it's kind of a different vulnerability. Yeah. And I guess I'm like looking for the perfect word and I can't really find it, but I feel like I just have never had an issue with being like, yeah, I'm not feeling that great today. It's maybe a Swedish thing, you know, but it would always get so uncomfortable. And it was like, don't say that. Like, don't talk about being sick. Don't talk about like having issues. And I'm like, but I do. And it's, you know, and I think it helped me that I was already like a full grown adult. I was 26 when this was taking off. I think if I would have been a teenager, I would have been able to handle any of it. Honestly.
Probably cathartic, I guess, in a way, right? To be able to do that. So.
Yeah, I think so.
So you're going to do a bunch of albums, obviously Grammy nominated, which must be incredible coming from that story that we spoke about, right? How did that feel? I mean, as some of your career highlights, I would imagine those are up there for sure.
Yeah, and I think also with like, I think also for the music video for Glad He's Gone, which was the 2020 Grammy nomination, was like the effort put into that and the pride I feel. And I get so much like shit for spending so much on my videos. It's like, I was like, it's so unnecessary, it doesn't matter. And I'm like, it does matter to me. And it's just like my second favorite for like way to express myself. And like I love it. And so I don't know, that was just a really special moment.
That's incredible about it, and congrats. I guess if you could look back at your younger self doing this stuff, like what would you say to yourself? Like what have you learned in the process?
Oh, wow. Probably just, honestly, I feel like I have so much to say where I'm like, I like young me, but also hate young me. But I feel like just keep pushing, like, keep doing what you're doing and like don't let any the negativity around like affect you, because it's going to be worth it in the end.
And also just tell Max Martin, put it on hold. I'm going to do my own thing. I don't have time for you. Anyway, let's fast forward.
Me.
Yeah, we don't have time. Let's fast forward to the new record, the tour. There's so much to talk about, obviously. And it's interesting. I was looking at TikTok the other day for To Die For. You know, there's an interesting thing that happens now with social media where songs take on a new life of its own. And I see that you really embrace that, which is great. And obviously there's like a dance craze now associated with To Die For. Great song. So it looks like you're embracing what's going on with the world and technology in that sense. Do you like it? You like TikTok and what's
I feel like
there?
I need both though. Like I can't just be a content creator like that. I have to like, sometimes I'm like, wait, am I also a musician? Like, am I actually like a serious artist who really put so much time on my craft and my songs and my videos and like the creative outlet, all has to be there. So as long as I get to spend all the time I need to perfect that, I love doing all the silly shit. Like I have a lot of fun on that app, honestly. Like I've found my way to just like, this is just a stupid part of my personality that you can all enjoy if you want, you know? But I think that I also just, it was actually an artist friend of mine who said this really well, because we were both kind of talking about like, it's so weird that there's like this whole other platform out that we just need to kind of, it's contradicting to everything that we've ever learned as pop stars to do. And it's just like, how do you find because it has to be natural, I think. You can't force it. But she was saying, she's like, I just want to like move with the time. I mean, it's pop culture. We got to be part of it, or, you can't like there's no point in resenting it. Just like figure out how to make it yours. And I was like, I love that. And I'm going to try. And I think I found my way, you know? Yeah.
Well,
and I enjoy it.
I was going to say, it's interesting. I think it was Halsey that said, I didn't really write songs to be 10 seconds long. And now I feel like the labels are like, we need 10 seconds. And it's like people didn't consume music initially in 10-second format.
No.
So, but I was joking around. I've joked around on this show that there's going to be an artist that comes out. I think there was an artist maybe this year, Pink Pantherist, that did a lot of like 30-second songs.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the wave of the future, right? That and the Swedish,
like,
the murder songs that we spoke about, that new genre that we were talking about.
Exactly. Right. No, but honestly, it's also like, I guess I'm just curious, but I also do think that there's always going to be a space for a 4 or 5 minute heartbreaking ballad in people's lives. There's room for everything. I guess that's kind of the thing. But, I guess I land somewhere in the middle where it's like I use almost this platform not to promote myself to just like this is me, and then I also have songs if you want to go listen to them, kind of like that. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the new record. There's so many great songs on the record. Obviously, Grapefruit is. I think by the time this comes out, the record will be out. The record actually comes out in a few days.
Oh my God, it is. Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
So Grapefruit is one of the songs which is very personal, and it talks about an eating disorder that you had like early on. And I think that you had to lose like 8 pounds in a week or two for a film you were doing early on. So talk about that video and the song and sort of the true confessional aspect of it.
Yeah, I guess it was. It's funny that I've never really talked about it. I think I've like mentioned in passing, like, I used to hate my body when I was a teenager, but I've never like gotten into it properly. And I think it's because I haven't written a song about it. To me, it's like when I write a song about something, that's when I have to talk about it, you know? But I think there was something about just, also being in lockdown and in stillness, kind of looking back at your life and thinking about your career and like who I am now and how I got here and just like all the changes that came with the past couple years, But then shooting this movie in Sweden, and it wasn't like you're fat, lose weight. It was like you're playing a starving sex worker from the 1850s. Like maybe you need to look a little less healthy. Like that was the, very carefully put to me. And like, so I don't want to like call them out for asking me to lose weight like that. But it was like in a very short period of time. And so I went on this like really intense diet for 2 weeks. And I haven't been on a diet since I got healthy like 10 years ago. So it was very like, oh, wow. It just sparked so many memories back.
Because when you were younger, you struggled with some of this, right?
So I had like pretty bad bulimia, like on and off for 5 years from I was like 15 to I was maybe 20. And then at 20, I kind of, this is rough estimated years, but I like had this moment. It's just such a evil disease. It carries a lot of shame, and you definitely try to hide it for everyone you can. And it's, and for me, at least, it's a very personal experience too. So I can't speak for everyone who struggles with this, but I think in general, just an unhealthy relationship to food, so many of my friends still have that I grew up with, that I just see. And it's like, it's triggering to people still. And I think I'm hoping that it's changed, but I don't really know. But I feel very proud of myself to like be in a place where it doesn't, like where I feel I really love my body, like truly, and feel very proud of it. I never look at myself and I'm like, if I could just change that, because I've been through like hell with that kind of thought process. But with an eating disorder, or like how it was for me, was that, okay, first I have to go to therapy to like kill the behavior and like stop the vicious sort of like circle of habits you have. And after you've done that, you have to go to therapy to deal with what actually is going on, because it's rarely about food or what you look like.
Deeper.
There's something deeper.
Sure.
And so it was a long time of recovery for me to really get properly well. But I'm very happy that by the time that I became an artist and a public person, I had been well for a few years. So it wasn't like, because that I think would have really messed it up for me.
Yeah.
Like the sort of the comments and the scanning of your looks and your body and everything,
Always the worst, the trolls. The worst.
So, I mean, I also learned quickly, like, just don't read the comments. Just don't look too deep into the,
But you also have a platform now where you can help millions of people, which I think in a way is something great about what's going on now, because there are so many ways for people to get information now and to help them.
Yeah.
So I guess if it is cathartic for you to talk about stuff like this, and then it helps a lot of younger people.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone has a weird relationship with food. So many people do. Like 80% of people, if you really break it down, probably have some strange relationship with food and the dynamic there.
And it's just like, for me, it's just such a, like, and that's what was kind of the thing with going on this diet again and remembering how everything, you're just so exhausted from constantly counting calories and thinking about what you're supposed to eat and not eat. And I think with the song, the reason why I wrote it, like, I just remember when I was feeling at my worst, I couldn't listen to songs about body positivity. It just made me feel like a failure because I wasn't feeling that way about myself. So when I'm like having I was having a good day and like, oh, I love my body today, I feel proud of myself, then I would love to listen to the body positivity songs. But I think the reason why I wrote it like this where you just kind of like are thrown into the worst part of the experience, is because that's what would help me. I wanted to listen to songs where people were feeling the way I was feeling. And so that's kind of why I wrote it from that perspective, and like, this is what it was like, you know.
Because there was nothing else that you could relate to at that point.
No. And you just like carry this feeling of self-hatred, shame, and failure, and it trickles into everything else in your life. It's exhausting. Yeah. I'm happy to be out of it.
Well, let's talk about the record, by the way. Third Femme, the title of the record.
Yes.
You said it makes you feel like dancing naked in the street and crying at the same time. So let's talk about that. That's an interesting juxtaposition. So
I think it's the being an emotional creature who can't, you know, I feel like I a lot of times feel like I'm emotionally too intense for the sort of like normal world. So I get it all out in my music and on stage and stuff like that, which is really, I found my outlet, which is so, you know, feel very blessed for that. But I think it's kind of the feeling of relief and like letting go and just like nostalgic happiness. I don't know. Yeah. Those combinations.
It's a good combination.
I also like cry when I'm happy. I cry when I'm sad. So I cry when I'm angry.
And also, let's not forget, it's the first release on your new record label, which is great. So how does that feel? Because before, I feel like labels probably really let you did an amazing like creative project. So I don't feel like you were really like put in a box where they wouldn't let you explore.
No. I feel like I really want to, like, I think there's been a lot of those like, oh, you happy to be out of the majors? And I'm like, I am, in the way that like now I don't ever have to fight for full control, you know.
Right.
But I felt very supported, and like, you know, they really let me, even when they were like, we don't really understand what you're doing, but we're not going to stop you from putting it out, like, you know, it's you know. So I was very appreciative of that, because that's not always the stories I've heard from other artists, you know, who've had like problems with their label, you know. But I feel like it just was the natural step for me, you know.
And you think you'll sign other artists under your own label now?
If there's enough time, yes. I kind of don't want to be a businesswoman. I kind of just want to be creative. So it would have to be if it's an artist that I can creatively be involved with, I think.
Oh, so that could be if you're collaborating with someone. The video, by the way, No One Dies from Love, incredible video.
Thank you.
One of my favorite videos I've seen lately. And the storytelling is incredible. I mean, the robot, we should talk about it for a moment. You fall in love with a robot. And then at a certain point, the robot's replaced with another robot. And it's this love affair. I mean, there's two different sort of versions of the video, by the way, because there's also the one that you did maybe in Palm Springs or something with the bodybuilder.
The scenes. I did like a sort of like a scene for every song, because I've kind of assigned like a character to every song. So I've sort of let the scenes represent that, and then the singles have kind of had their standalone music videos. That the only rule is that it needs to feel very cinematic and gorgeous.
Well, I love the video. Talk about the story behind the video with the robots and how that came about.
So
maybe that's where we're headed in life. I don't know. I'm going to fall in love with the robot.
Yeah, I feel like I'm very sentimental to anything that has like eyes, even if it's fake eyes, you know. So I feel like I can find most things cute if they interact with me, if that makes sense. So I feel like I sent the song to Alaska, this Brazilian director team who I love, who did a video with me for Are You Gonna Tell Her, a song on Sunshine Kitty that we shot in Brazil, and it was like an incredible video. And just sent it to them and like, here is the song, like honestly, just let us know what comes to you. Like the only thing I would say is like, I would love for it to be, feel like a movie, you know. That was all I said. And then Marco, one of the guys, called us back and was like, okay, so I think I have a perfect idea for this song. And he just basically gave us the whole storyline of like me being this like lonely starlet in a big house, and then I'm feeling lonely, so I buy this robot to keep me company and like help me out around the house. And then you see these like romantic vignettes, and then I just like, and I'm the asshole in the end, you know, like switching her out to someone new. And I was just like, this is perfect. I don't want to hear any other ideas. This is all, we have to make this, you know. That was it. And then we ironed out the details and like figured out what those little like the badminton moment and the like, you know.
Not to give too much away, but if you haven't watched it, go watch it. It reminds me of an episode of like Black Mirror in a sense.
Yes.
Which is my favorite show.
It is the Black Mirror episode. I was obsessed. For sure. Yeah.
And the new record, by the way, a bunch of collabs on the record, obviously SG Lewis and First Aid Kit. Any one that particularly stands out for you? You know, we didn't get into all the songs, but there's so many great songs on there. Kick in the Head is one of my favorites.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. That actually, let's talk about that for a little bit. I think it's the first song I did with my roommate, Tim, who is now, we also did True Romance, How Long, and Grapefruit. So he's like, and him and Ludwig now love working together. So like now he's like one of the first like people after Ludwig that I'm like, oh, we really like connect in this way. And that was the first song that we wrote together after a year in quarantine. And then I was like, wait, Tim, should we do a session? And he's like, yeah, I've kind of been waiting for you to ask, but you keep talking about how you're not feeling inspired and don't want to write, so I haven't dared to ask you.
So you were living together with him, but you never thought about creating music.
Yeah, I live in like a collective with like 5 people, and
never thought right in front of you. Here's the
no. It was also because I wasn't feeling like writing. Right. I wasn't very inspired during that year, but and then this was the first song that we made, and I think I don't even know. I can't remember if it was like I think it was. I just sang melodies and like on some chords he made. And then he just like, I kind of wanted to play with it a little bit. And what do you think of this beat? And I was like, it's so unexpected, you know, from that first dramatic, beautiful, like synth world into that beat. And I was like, this is so good. Yeah. So that was kind of our first collaboration, and then I was like, we need to make more. This is so unique, and
I love all the collaborations you've done. You've done so many. We can talk about it for a moment, but actually we had Simon Le Bon on the show not long ago, so we spoke about you, and we spoke about the collaboration you did with Duran Duran, which was great,
wow.
which was awesome. But obviously along the way, he's great. But along the way, obviously Nick Jonas, Coldplay, Charlie XCX, Major Lazer. I mean, we're forgetting. There's 50 others, but anyone that stands out in your mind is like, I wish I like the return to that collab at some point, because I feel like it's unfinished business. Maybe it's Lorde, maybe it's Coldplay. I don't know who it might be.
I feel like I always love doing stuff with Charlie, because I think she's just a great friend of mine and just an incredible writer. I also loved writing with Dua. It was so fun. Like that was a really cool experience as well. And then I have so many, but I will say also Lorde is like, just because she's such a lyric nerd, just like me, just like sitting, writing lyrics with her, I will never forget, like, I might have told the story a few times, but we were sitting, figuring out the lyrics for Homemade Dynamite, and she was like, for the second verse, she's like, it was just me and her, and she's like, I kind of feel like it would be so cool if it was like, it's like a car crash, but then we're like still, either we're survived or like the ghosts are partying, like we're still kind of like, it's like it's a beautiful crash. And like, how do you describe the like image of that, like broken glass and blood? And I was like panicking. I was like, I don't know. Trying to figure out. She's like, oh, what about like we painted red and chrome on the road, or the broken glass sparkling? And I was like, it's the most beautiful sentence I've ever heard describing like someone dead on the road. Yeah. Like it was such a...
Only Lorde could do that.
Yeah,
right?
And that's what I was saying. I was like, only you could write that sentence.
Yeah.
That's how it felt for me. And I was like, I'm very happy I was here for that. And then I contributed with, I guess we're partying. She's like, I love it. I'm like, oh my God, this is so...
So maybe there's more there. Maybe there's another Lorde collaboration coming up.
I would love to write with her again. Yeah.
That'd be great. Was it a bit harder to tap into sort of the dark sensibilities now that you're happily married? Congrats, by the way. It's been a couple of years, but do you feel like
still
this?
Happy.
Yeah, but this record, like, because it's different when you're maybe alone, or you're single, and then you're happily married. Difficult to tap into the dark side of yourself or dark sensibilities for this record?
So I'm just gonna take my jacket.
Yeah,
I'm like,
sure.
now I'm feeling the heat. Actually,
it's a little hot.
No, but I actually no. I feel like because I'm still the same like emotional person. I feel like I guess in my everyday life, I wake up, more often happy than not. Yeah. But there's so much stuff outside of him that can really just get me to a dark place. But I feel like I also tend to do a lot of, I write like my worst case scenario nightmare with something that he would do to me, or like, if I have a dream where he cheated on me or something, and I wake up and I'm like just the most cliche, I'm like mad at him, and he's like, I didn't actually do it, and I'm like, Did you though?
They're dream inspired almost.
Yeah, yes, exactly. My worst nightmares all come true in this album. Yeah.
Well, it's a great time for you, obviously. And you got a bunch of touring coming up. So let's talk about that for one moment. So you obviously have the rest of this year, which is UK and Europe.
Yes.
And then next year, you're going to be hitting America and South America, Lollapalooza. Have you done Lollapalooza before?
Yes, a bunch of times. I love it.
Yeah.
It's like all over the world, and it's always amazing.
Perry's been a friend of the show and has been on the show a bunch, and he's great. Perry Farrell.
Oh, yeah, nice.
He's great.
Yeah, I honestly, I've always had such a good experience, like great crowds, like just a festival in general, like always fun acts. It's one that I usually like stay and hang out at and try to see other bands if I can. Yeah.
Well, that's, I think, March of next year, you hit South America, Lollapalooza. And then this year, so you got some more dates this year, right at the end of this year, actually coming up in a couple weeks, Europe and
UK. We start in Dublin on my birthday, actually.
Amazing.
Yes.
Happy early birthday.
Thank you. And then we go through UK and then go through Europe. We end in Stockholm. Which will be very sweet and emotional. And then, and that's the end. That's the end of touring for this year, which is, it's been a pretty busy one, actually. It was like, 2022 won't be that busy with shows, but it's been kind of nonstop.
But we're also making up for lost time, right? Because there was a couple years we've been too much. So.
I've been like, say yes to everything. I don't care what it is, just say yes. My manager's
hopefully
like,
the podcast isn't one of them, but I'll say yes to that show too.
No.
But the rest,
I love this format. I love it.
But also next year, obviously touring Americas. I think you're playing the Wilter maybe in LA, which is very exciting.
2 nights at the Wilter.
Amazing. So I'll have to come down to that for sure. The new record is phenomenal, Dirt Famine. It's out right about now when you hear this show. Yes. Anything else you can tell us that's exciting coming up? I mean, you did the Euphoria thing earlier this year. You worked with Pussy Riot. There's more. There was so much to go over.
Yeah, go Nadia. I'm like, is there anything that we didn't cover? I don't think so.
Well, pick up the new record because it's just out now. There's so much good stuff on the record. And thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. It is a little hot now in the studio, right?
Just got a little hot, but it's fine. Yeah.
Well, we'll see you next time, and I'll see you at the Wiltern, I hope, coming up.
Yes, please come.
Awesome.
Amazing.
Thanks,
Thank
Tove.
you.
Appreciate it.